fine. How are you? Hey, I like the tie.
Thank you very much.
Good.
I know.
Does that have Wi-Fi? Like, yes, or is there some other...
What's that?
I think it was just, yeah.
Oh, I just wanted something for and he should call me.
I appreciate it. How's it going? Good to see you.
Yeah, he felt bad. He wanted to be here, but you know how scheduling is.
But it was a very good conversation. It was timely tonight.
Hey.
These are cups we're using today, or you remember? Hey,
Cohort isn't here today.
What's that?
I said a cohort isn't
Yeah.
here today.
He's out cruising, isn't he?
I texted me this morning, he's in Belize.
Well,
You're gonna have to go.
good for him.
I already went. I already
Take your
went.
business.
What I did was, I did. Really?
Yeah, he texted me this morning.
Yeah.
He
You
never
don't fit
texted
back here.
me. He texted me this morning, he goes, I hope you're going to be at the meeting today. I can't come on.
What a beauty. Yeah, they're nice. Hey, Julie.
Hey, did you get a call today?
Yeah,
That was good news.
yeah.
Hi, Carrie.
How are you?
From DNR.
Nope. Did you get a call from Tina?
Yeah.
Today?
No.
Yeah,
We
before.
put you at the end.
What's the good news?
Oh, how you doing? I'm gonna squeeze behind you, dude.
Hey, Justin.
What are you getting? A new alley?
Good to see you.
At your
What's going on?
L.A.
LA.
You getting a little downtime, hopefully?
I thought you said alley.
Nice for us.
Because I can tell you, I got my alley fixed or something.
Want me to get rid of one? I can bring projects to the desk.
I'd give my left arm for your L.A.
Oh, yeah.
No, alley, I mean.
So first
All right, well, welcome.
well, they asked me about the budget and all that stuff.
And then secondly,
He died.
Huh? And I said, well, first off, and I said, no, I don't want to have any other comment on it.
We got that trail is rolling. So
Anyways,
still got some stuff to work through, but
they got it?
we might need to get involved again. They're having a little bit of trouble with labor and industry. It's at least moving there, at least allowing the non-controversial sections of the trail.
See, a couple of phone calls help once in a while.
All right.
Feel free to start.
Oh gosh, I think Bob Meyer got 15 different phone calls.
Well, yeah, 'cause I definitely called them. And did you call?
I called him, I called Stroman.
Sandy called them.
her daughter and stuff.
Okay, so what is the
Oh, okay.
what's the process here?
Hanging out there. She's
Got 18 different books, resolutions, and
Stick with the chair, whatever he says.
okay.
So yeah, in Cohasset, they're on the
Be
Tioga
listening,
Pit there.
go get me some more water.
But these, Lorena, these
So in Cohasset around the Tioga Pit, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Cohasset?
Well, the Tioga Pit in Cohasset. Anyway, the IRRRR gave them some money for a bike path. The state gave them some bonding.
I'm gonna have to do Sharpie and write for it.
Fancy.
say Lorraine.
Rams.
Letters are.
What, did I not do good enough to get a Rams pen?
You gotta talk to that guy.
There he is.
Around the table.
So anyway,
You guys are scrubbing them too
13
hard.
contractors out there starting the project, and the DNR came in and stopped work order on the whole project because there was a tiny little section with a wetland. Exactly. They could have put their bonding money in there.
Okay.
Bonding money
You ready?
between me and Thomasoni and Billinger.
Call meeting IRRRB board to order. First off is roll call. I don't think we have to do that, but we know who's here. Second, approval of minutes from the February 22nd, 2019 meeting. All right, Corn, have you looked at the minutes?
Yeah, right now they look good.
All right, they look good. You move it.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Senator Eichord moves minutes. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Commissioners' comments.
Yes, I don't have a lot, because we got the budget today, but there's just some events I want to make sure the board members are aware of. And I want to mention, we just had a community development resource partner meeting over in Mountain Iron last Wednesday, where we had all the city administrators and mayors and people in to go through all our programs. And we have one coming up with the banks for our lending programs in the future. And that's on Wednesday, June 19th. There's a business development lending forum. And I know I put these in the updates to you, but I should remind you, on Saturday, June 8th, up at the Big Fork City Hall, there's an open house for their project up there. June 21st, there's a groundbreaking up in Ely for the 17th Avenue project and the Trailhead project. And the 28th, there's a grand opening of the Discover Wolves exhibit in Ely. I do want to mention that there was some requests to talk about strategic planning, so Mary Ann will be covering a little bit of that when we do the budget, so rather than having a separate thing. So, and I always like to give you a heads up on some business development things. So we're working with several clients, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that we asked for some investment in the past in shovel-ready sites, and we've already had some play over at the Hibbing Airport. We had a aircraft manufacturer come through this last week, and one reason there is that we're shovel-ready. So I just want, these are good investments, and we might be coming back in the future for that kind of investment. We've recently subscribed to a new lead generation service called Gazelle, and I've gotten really positive feedback about that, so we're trying to step up our game on the finding new business opportunities. And the other thing we're doing is we've struggled in finding manufacturers that want to locate next to some of our mining operations where we have some of the highest wages in Minnesota. And so we're really refocusing back on natural resource stuff. So I've been spending some time with the NRRI, and I'm on their advisory board, and the technology transfer guy from the University of Minnesota, Jay Shankler, is the new chair of the advisory board. And we've really renewed our relationship with NRI, and we have about a dozen things we're working on. And in a couple weeks, we're getting together on 3 that seem very close to actually being able to become a factory of some kind or a processing facility in that. So, and they have to do with usually forest products or minerals or things like that. So I'm feeling good about that, and there'll be more to come on that as these projects develop. I'll bring them back to the board, but I just wanted to give you a quick update. So that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions for the commissioner? All right, moving on. We'll start on the resolutions. Living Fabricators, Resolution 19-025, Matt Schoberg and Scott Sunball.
Chair, members of the board, we have 3 participation loans today. First one will be Living Fabricators. Total project cost is $230,000. We will partner with Security State Bank on this, so our portion is $115,000. The loan is for multiple pieces of equipment, mainly a metal analyzer and a measuring tool. Collateral will be the equipment and also secured by inventory, equipment, ARs, and furniture and fixtures. With this new equipment, it's a possibility of 2 new jobs, and also retain 33, but mainly it's to keep the company efficient and remain competitive.
Here.
And this is Sandy Bryant from Living Fabricators, and if you have any questions.
Mr. Bryan, anything more to add?
No, it'll help us to grow. We grew 17.5% last year, and I think we're expecting very similar growth this year as well, so this will help us to continue on.
Okay, any questions? Senator Thomasoni and then Representative Sampson.
Well, go ahead, you go first.
Our packet says 31 originally, and then you said 33.
I have 30, let me just double check mine. Maybe a typo on my end. 31 here, okay.
Senator Thomasoni.
So I was just wondering if you have any problem finding people to hire.
We do.
Yeah.
I think you'll hear the same story, but yeah, we're looking for several people right now. So yeah, we're looking.
And can we help anyway at the colleges, or is there a way to try and tailor something there for the types of jobs that you have in your area, or?
Possibly. We're not a big consumer as some other fields are, but we're probably more of a technical field than some of the other fabricators around here. For instance, TIG welding with the finer, thinner materials. And so if we can be any of help to some of the colleges as well, I'm willing to provide material and be a part of that curriculum if we can kind of open that up a little bit.
And Mr. Chairman, have you been in any active discussions with the community colleges or anything about the possibility of doing something like that?
Not as of late.
Okay.
Some years ago I was. So.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions? All right, Senator Thomasoni moves this resolution. Correct number already, 19-025, seconded by Representative Sandsted. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you. Next up is 19-026, Range Cornice and Roofing Company.
So our next project is Range Cornice and Roofing Company. I have Shelley Marty from Range Cornice joining us.
Welcome, Ms. Marty.
Hello.
Range Corner's total project cost is $742,173, of which we are a portion, we're just $207,000 on a portion of a piece of equipment for this project. The equipment is a metal bender with attachments. It will be collateralized by the equipment purchase from the loan, and this does retain the 6 sheet metal jobs that they have. And Shelley can answer any other questions that you have on.
Any questions from the board?
Shelley comment on it.
You got any comments, Shelley?
Well, what we're doing is we currently have a machine right now, but we're updating it. The machine that we have right now only cuts 10-foot lengths. The machine that we are purchasing will allow us to cut up to 21-foot lengths, and it'll actually allow us to do tapered panels instead of just straight panels, so we'll be able to order coils. And a lot of the roofing panels and stuff now that a lot of people are requesting are actually a tapered panel, because we're doing a lot of curved roofing. So that's why we want to get this machine, because we'll be able to fabricate them ourselves instead of ordering them out, where sometimes they're like 6 to 8 weeks out. It's a safer machine, because actually when we put the metal in there, it'll bend the whole panel. Our machine now, we actually put it in, then we have to pull it out, flip it, turn it, bend it, so it's actually safer for our employees to do it. And eventually, it could turn into a possibility that we could do some manufacturing for some of our metal fabricators or metal suppliers also. So it's a potential for growth in the future.
Representative Blayman.
Just a comment, I'm impressed by the wages. Looks like these are 6 good paying jobs.
Yeah, we're a union contractor, so we pay.
Have you ever had a loan with the agency before?
No, we haven't.
I guess that was one of my questions, is potential for growth. It sounds like it might be there with this, and maybe potentially adding jobs down the road.
Yep, if it works out for us, that, you know, we could get the, if it works out that the need is there for the manufacturer, then we have we have the property that we could put a facility, or if we actually just put a new building up on our property, that would work for manufacturing also. So.
Nice.
Any other questions from the board? All right, Representative Sandsted moves resolution 19026, seconded by Senator Thomasoni. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Resolution 19-027, Cass Corporation.
Cass Corporation, and we have Tim Bungarden here from Cass. Total project cost is $610,000. We'll be participating with Security State at $305,000 each, and it is for a second power supply in the foundry. This way he'll be able to run both lines simultaneously. Collateral on the loan will be the equipment purchased from the loan. Possibility of 8 new employees. Correct. And it did have a contingency what was met on May 22nd. So. And if you have any questions for Tim?
Any comments on the request?
Well, I started the business 25 years ago as a one-man show on $2,300, and so it's a capital-intensive business, and IRRRB has helped me in the past through the 25 years, probably starting about 15 years ago, and it's much appreciated. It is kind of hard to grow a business when it's capital-intensive, so no, I appreciate the help.
Great. Any questions from the board? Senator Bach.
Mr. Baumgartner, are you current on the outstanding loans that you have?
Correct, yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Thomasoni.
Scott, what was the contingency?
Was on the bank approving also. When the time of our TAC meeting, the bank had not had.
It was a participating loan because we are at the max of securities lending ability. Yeah, that was one.
Any other questions? Senator Thomasoni moves the resolution 19-027, seconded by Representative Sandsted. And for the discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Resolution 19-028, Development and Community Infrastructure Projects. Mr. Ismail, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I have 13 fiscal year 19 development and community infrastructure projects for your review and comment today. Those projects in those communities are requesting $2.376 million in agency funds, and the total public-private investment is $17.7 million with a leverage public to private, $1 public, $7 private on this investment, potential investment. The community infrastructure, there are 7 community infrastructure projects for your review and 6 development infrastructure projects. Start with community infrastructure, City of Aiken. The project consists of replacement and upgrades, water, sewer, storm sewer hydrants, road reconstruction on Northwest Street. This infrastructure is aging, problematic in many areas of town. The focus will be on 8 blocks of infrastructure and road reconstruction, totaling $2.4 million. Good partner funding here. They've come together with our agency, the city themselves, the county, and Public Facilities Authority is providing some of the financing on this project, or the majority of financing on the project. And the request is for $250,000 from the agency. City of Chisholm, community infrastructure project. The project includes complete street and utility replacement, water, sewer. This is about a 4-block construction project. 5th Avenue, 13th Street, and Highway 73. Sanitary mains and water mains and services. And these are lead-based joints, and some are clay pipes. So a lot of I&I. This is about a $1.1 million project. The request is for $190,000. Chisholm-Hibbing Airport Authority. The project consists of airport parking lot replacement and expansion, new lighting, efficiency LED lighting, also security fencing. And we've made some significant investment in the airport over the last 20 years with the new terminal, with some businesses, some expansion of some businesses, and so these upgrades have become necessary as that airport has continued to grow. They're looking for $154,680 on a $1.37 million project. City of Crosby. Project consists of sewer main relocation for the construction of a multi-use underpass tunnel to provide a safe route access to Highway 6 for snowmobilers, bikers, and walkers. So this project had gone through an engineering process, was ready to go, and ended up finding out after the fact that there was a sewer main that needed to be relocated right where this tunnel was going to go. And that responsibility was put back on the Serpent Lake Sanitary Sewer District. So I think it was about a $240,000 additional cost. We're splitting that with the sewer district, $120,000 a piece. So the city amount that you see there, $411,000, that actually includes the $120,000 from the sewer district lumped in there. And we also provided some money through our trail program for that underpass as a partnership with MnDOT and the DNR. So again, a lot of partner funding brought in on this project. $1.732 million project. Greenway Joint Recreation Association. The project consists of winding the Hodgins say it for me. Berardo Arena walkway on the east side of the complex to make it ADA accessible. New infrared gas heaters, glass in the lobby for added viewing, new public address system. This toured the facility, and this walkway is a huge hazard and a lawsuit waiting to happen. They made an investment themselves on one side of the arena and really expended their accounts. When they looked at these additional items, we looked at what we could come in on, and our funding couldn't be used for these other components of the project, being the gas heaters and the glass in the lobby, but we could help on the ADA accessibility component. So their request is for $47,412, and they'll be matching it with the rest of the money for the project. So we're taking on a portion of the ADA component. City of Ironton, project consists of water system improvements for essential infrastructure services by resurfacing their water tower, rehabilitating the community well. This impacts the entire community, all their water users within the community. This project is also a partnership with us and Deed and the city, and it's really a introductory project tied to them needing a new water treatment facility upgrade. So this is kind of that first piece to that. And they're looking for $62,000 on this project, $340,000 total project. Kelsey Township project consists of construction of a new emergency services facility / fire hall. The current fire hall is more than a detriment to safety and service than an asset. I toured the facility. It's coming down, and you can barely fit the trucks that are in it. It was built in 1962, dilapidated, blighted. The township has met and approved funding for it on their end. They're asking for $175,000 on a $378,000 project. The development infrastructure projects, the 6 projects. The first is City of Babbitt. Project consists of utility extension as part of the Phase 2 campground development project. This project includes expanding the existing Birch Lake Recreation Area to add a 22-acre campground with 49 new campsites that will accommodate recreational vehicles as well as 10 campers, 2 restrooms, camp office shower restroom facility, construction at the campground. This is a major tourism project for these folks. The high cost to the project, Phase 2 you see at $1.4 million. There's probably over another $2.6 million from the first phase of the project, and the high cost is due to trying to run the utilities from in town all the way out to the site to service the campground. But a lot of partner funding on the table for this project. This component, they're looking for $250,000 on $1.4 million project cost. City of Cook Development Infrastructure project is to construct a new water main loop on the south side of Highway 53. Really, this is to service both the Zups redevelopment for their grocery store, but also to provide larger water capacity for that entire business corridor, to include Lucky 7 all the way up to Zups, McDonald's, the Subway shop, all those businesses. I think right now they're running a small 4-inch line through someone's backyard to service the Zoop site, and by code we've made some earlier investment into that site on the rebuild, and if they built today they wouldn't have the water capacity for the sprinkler system to work. They couldn't open. So this needs to be done. The city is ready to move forward with this. City of Ely. The project will extend fiber on both alleys on the north and south side of Sheridan Street. So this is a fiber project to bring high-speed fiber, really in a business corridor within town. So it's really to service the businesses. The utility poles that exist there are owned both by the City of Ely and Frontier Communications. The city will own the new fiber. It's their project, and then the services, internet services, will be provided by CTC. They'll be the ones leasing those and running the fiber to the businesses. And the lease payments that CTC is provided used to pay off anticipated debt service on the project, as well as invest in other future fiber for their downtown district. They're asking for $120,000 on a $240,000 project. City of Grand Rapids. Project consists of a new sewer line, water line extensions, and site work for the construction of a new 8,400 square foot facility located at 110 Gulf Coast Road. The building will provide space for the merging of 2 private health club facilities in Grand Rapids to create one state-of-the-art advanced fitness health center, with additional space that'll be leased out for rapid nutrition. The project is expected to create 6 permanent jobs, 5 construction jobs. Total project investment $1.5 million. They're asking us strictly on the utilities to be extended into the site, $57,000. City of Mountain Iron. Project entails the reconstruction of Mountain Iron Drive from 13th Street South to the border between the cities of Mountain Iron and Virginia. This would be total reconstruction. would provide some improvements to their stormwater drainage and new road base. And this is the road corridor that runs from Adventures Restaurant all the way over to Menards, wraps by the strip mall that's there, that's for sale at this point. I don't believe there's maybe 2 or 3 tenants left in that strip mall. And that road is in deplorable condition, and this will really help make that site viable for sale for new development. Total cost $765,000. We're looking at $350,000 to serve as a business development project. City of Silver Bay. Project consists of Phase 2 building construction portion of the campground development project, within which entails the construction of a 49-site municipal campground along North Shore of Lake Superior. The property is owned by the City of Silver Bay. The property is owned by the City of Silver Bay and is adjacent to the newly obtained Black Beach Park. This campground will be operated by the city, and all sites have electricity. 15 sites, 30 amp only, and 34 sites, 30 amp. So these sites, this location, you know, Silver Bay has always come to us and said, how do we get people to turn into our town? Locating this campground right at the entrance of their city, pretty much. They've also just had a ribbon cutting and a grand opening of an adventure park that's been built in the corner of that intersection. And I think we helped with some demolition money to take down the old Spur gas station there to help that development take place. And so between this adventure park and the new campground, this will bode well for the City of Silver Bay. The request is for $250,000 on this phase, and the total project investment is $765,000 on this second phase. And this phase includes main office building with lavatory, showers, and a pavilion. I'll entertain any questions on the project. Thank you.
Any question, Representative Sandstead?
I actually have a question, but it might be for Mr. Betchika. When the IRRRB allocates dollars for different projects like this, are these dollars considered state dollars? And the reason I'm asking that is, as different communities are looking at different projects in the future and they're going out for bonding dollars, there's a request for non-state match. So my question is, are these considered state dollars?
Shemechka.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stan said, we actually have memorandums from the Attorney General's office that state that these dollars can be considered local match dollars.
Okay.
Because the source of the funding is local, production taxes and local property taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh,
Yeah.
Representative Lehman.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I've got just a few probably comments, a couple questions. Happy to see the Greenway Joint Association. I think Senator Iackorn, Representative Sandsteed, and I, and you toured this like a year ago, right? So is this what's coming out of that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, they're ready to do the construction this summer.
Okay, all right. It took a while to get everything together. And
Well, and I think they had some higher cost bids, and we asked them to go back and work with the contractors to bring some of the costs down and do it at a time where bidding wasn't so competitive. I think they were, initially when we looked at this, construction contractors were pretty full.
I thought maybe it was the state championship that spurred.
No, I can't say that.
Time to invest in that.
That's right.
Well, I know that the arena, the ADA requirements in that narrow walkway and things like that were really needed to be replaced. So happy to see that.
And we've made investments in Babbitt's Arena. I mean, if they're smaller, if they're tied to, if they're not coming back every year to say this is a line item, ongoing administrative or maintenance fund, we can do these once every 20 years for public benefit.
Representative Lehman.
Yeah, and then a question on the city of Ely. Looks like this is a broadband project amongst the infrastructure. So I guess I'm just a little fuzzy on how we support broadband. We don't have a separate program for broadband. It's going, so when we see broadband projects, they'll be in this development infrastructure program?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, this is also, Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, we didn't build out any guidelines specific to a program or create funding in fiscal year 19's budget to administer a program. And we're still running, these are fiscal year 19 dollars. So, I mean, really, broadband is infrastructure, and depending on the projects, if we have the wherewithal within our budgets to do that, where it's not going to be a project of such magnitude that it's going to deplete our budget, it's always fit under infrastructure for us. Yeah, Representative Lyman.
Yeah, because I'll give you an example, and I'm not sure if this would even fit. I have a resort, a high-end quality resort that is a half a mile away from Paul Bunyan, if I were going by. And I mean, they're losing customers because they don't have high-speed internet. And the owner is the chair of Visit Grand Rapids and on the chamber board. I mean, really active. They're very active in tourism. And so I think I worked out a solution with Paul Bunyan to, because it was going to cost the resort $25,000 to connect,
sure,
to run that half mile. Yep. And Paul Bunyan was good enough to not ask for that up front, and we worked out a deal where they can pay it off over time, and increase the rates and so on. But do you, I mean, I envision there's probably other projects like that where there, I just was reading the city council minutes from Coleraine, and there was a business in front of the city saying, Paul Bunyan's right down the street, why can't I connect, and so on. So is there a need for that fiber to the premise role for IRRRB, or is that going too far?
Mr. Ismail. Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, I think the concern becomes this. If it's servicing one business, that becomes a challenge. I mean, if there were 10 businesses coming in at one point, and we said $25,000 per business, and we did a $250,000 grant, that's reasonable based on the budget allocation we have to service 50 cities and 133 townships. I think we just have to be careful when it's one residential home, one business. If we can, we can play a role too, where we work with our partners at CTC and Frontier and Paul Bunyan, CenturyLink, to sit down and say, how can we work out a deal to help that one business? Or maybe we're not going to open a door where individual businesses, but we would look at any project and look at finding a solution. If that business sits within a township, we would set up a meeting with that township. There may be a way for us to help in a project like that. Again, $25,000, based on our policy here at the agency, we would do a one-to-one match. So could be that we come in and help. Yeah, I have to be careful what I just said.
Okay, it's the last question on this particular project then. Is there state money in this project? Is that what the deed, or, excuse me?
No. On the Ely project,
yeah,
it's city money. The city's making the investment.
Okay.
There isn't state money. And I don't believe that the state's program looks at underserved population. I don't know that the state that this would score competitively the size of the project it is and the number of users. This is really a business development project. This is to service businesses.
Okay, one last question.
Representative Lehman.
It's Mr. Chair and Chris, the city of Silver Bay. As I recall, sitting on the Capital Investment Committee this year, there was a project like this going for bonding money.
Yes.
Is that this project?
Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, that is this project. This project really totals about $2.6 million, I believe.
Yeah, okay.
So the first phase, there's a portion of funding you don't see in this that we did fund in the first phase. I didn't want to include that in this. So, we're using numbers that looks like, we're inflating job creation. I want to be specific about this phase, and that's why you see it's at 65. But there was an additional $1.5 million.
That will come from bonding.
The bonding has already taken place, it's my understanding. Like they've received, I think they've closed the deal up on the financing on this project. This project is done. Like the money's in place.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Sarah Bach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ismail, what do the 50 cities or 133 townships around the state that don't have that many dollars do these kind of things? I mean, I'm raising that because it's pretty amazing that all these cities that don't have a mine get the benefit from the wealth sharing that happens. I don't mean to sound like my dear friend Representative Rocavino, but there's a lot of sharing that goes on around the Iron Range between communities, like communities that have the wealth and have the mines and share with the ones that don't. I mean, I look at my mayor of Two Harbors has benefited a great deal and doesn't have a mine. the mayor from Silver Bay in front of him does. And he shares with two harbors, and it's pretty amazing what we're able to do here. Other cities around the state don't have that opportunity, so it's quite an honor to be able to support the projects.
Any other questions from the board? Thanks, Senator Bach. Senator Bach moves resolution 19-028, seconded by Senator Rude. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Resolution 19-029, Iron Range Higher Education Account. Mr. Smith.
That's what's needed for the Economic Development District.
Mr. Chairman? Commissioner.
Yep, everybody's getting ready. I happened to be at a groundbreaking for the, or not a groundbreaking, a ribbon cutting for the Lakehead Constructors project that we had some infrastructure dollars in over in Aurora yesterday, and it was a celebration, and there was a lot of labor people there, and they asked me, you know, they look to this board meeting as, you know, what's the work going to be like in the future? So I just want to point out again, one of our goals has been leveraging our dollars up. So I think it was like 7-to-1. So with this meeting, with the dollars we approved today. So that's $17 million worth of construction coming up around here for our companies, our construction companies, and our union people finding employment. So just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Commissioner. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Phillips, members of the board. Iron Range Higher Education Committee is a legislatively created committee charged to advise the Commissioner of the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation on providing higher education programs in the taconite assistance area. Currently, the Iron Range Higher Education Committee consists of Representative Sandstead, Senator Tomasoni, Representative Eklund, Commissioner Phillips, Representative Lehman, a citizen member appointed by the governor, Julie Marinucci, who is an engineer, as well as a representative of the University of Minnesota, Dr. Rolf Wieberg of NRRI. That group met on Wednesday, April 24th, 2019, at the State Capitol building to hear program updates and consider a program funding request. At that time, the Iron Range Higher Education Committee approved an expenditure of up to $870,000 of Iron Range Higher Education account funds to provide a grant to the Northeast Higher Ed District for use by the Iron Range Engineering Program for the continuation of this higher education program that, in collaboration with private industry, allows students to earn a Bachelor's of Science degree in engineering from Minnesota State University Mankato while attending school on the Iron Range.
There we are.
There we are.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Representative Sandstead.
I have a question for Mr. Betchika. Keeping you busy today. What happens if we don't approve this budget today?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sandstead, with the change in the statute 2 years ago, the board is advisory on a particular issue. So I think the board has to provide some kind of consultation here. If you were to vote no, that wouldn't necessarily stop the commission from going forward.
Okay.
Representative Sandstead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this higher education meeting on April 24th, of which I'm the chair, we basically heard updates on programs, how things had progressed from our previous budget and what was happening. The actual action items of the forthcoming budget was really crammed into the last 2 minutes of the meeting. And I had great concern about the budget. I have been, specifically in the higher education program, IRRRB, I had been looking at many of the expenses that have been occurring. They seem very out of the usual and customary type of things, and I had hoped to have discussion on that. But because we all had to get to the floor and the meeting had to be adjourned, we didn't really have a very full discussion about what those issues are, what those items are. I do think, even though the budget was approved at the higher education meeting, I feel that it got pushed through too quick. And following that meeting, I was contacted by 2 of the board members who expressed the same concerns. I think that it would do us well to kind of talk about what past practices have been. At the meeting, the commissioner did share with us that changes have been made, but I asked if those changes had been presented to the board or if we had approved them. They had not. And so I just think it would be helpful to all of us to have a better understanding of maybe what has been going on versus what will be going on forthcoming. And I think all of those activities will impact the bottom line. We've been pretty much every year asked to subsidize the program at almost $1 million a year. This year it was less than that, but I think maybe there's a way of potentially doing a little bit better by shoring up some of our practices and not having to spend as much money on subsidizing or looking at other things that we could be subsidizing. So my advice would be maybe to table this or hold off until we can have a better understanding of what's happening. But that's just my suggestion.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, just so again for informational purposes, when the IRRRB program started, the agency block granted the money. When I say block grant, provided the money up front to the Northeast Higher Education District, and as Representative Stanley pointed out, it was like $1 million or so for the first number of years, and they would just give them a check. When I came in 2015 and we went through the legislative auditor's program evaluation, although they did not cite this in their report, their final report, they did talk to me about the fact that all our other grants we pay on invoices the percentage that we're involved in the project. So if we're on a 50-50 basis with a community, when we get an invoice for a project, we pay 50% of it, and then the other match from the community or from other sources picks up the balance. So we decided to move and because we had the opportunity annually to renegotiate our contracts with the higher education district. So we renegotiated our contracts to begin to approve the invoices individually and the new under a new contract. So and at the same time, by the way, we also made sure that the approvals, because we split Roy's time with the college, we didn't want the college's employee approving the invoices. So the approvals come up to me, and now myself and Jason, I guess technically, commissioner and deputy. So we went to that. So when we went to that, we had an opportunity to see a lot more detail of the invoices. And there was expenditures that involved all kinds of things involved in student life and things that go on at colleges. And so as we plowed through that particular year, we had an opportunity to see what what this was going to be like. And I think this is some of the concerns that Representative Sanchez had of what type of expenditures. When I say student life, they have a cohort program. They work a lot of different hours with these students, evenings and things, so they might buy pizzas. And so we look at these invoices and say, is this isn't our bailiwick, this kind of expenditure. So we have since renegotiated our most current contract into what kinds of expenses do we think are appropriate for the IRRRB higher ed dollars in the contract. So we now have specific guidelines for what we're willing to pay for, which are the expenditures for the actual instruction and things like that. I would call them the more hard expenses, not the soft expenses, that the college can pay for that through whatever means they have, tuition or whatever. So we have taken this, there's been an evolution. So I'm tending to agree with Representative Sandstead, but I think we've done a pretty good job of what you concerned about. And I think we provided you quite a bit of the information on this. I may be wrong about that, but so I think we're at a place now that we feel pretty good about, that and the thing I want to point out is that we've always been in compliance with our agreements with the college. So when we had a block grant, we honored our agreement, they honored their agreement. When we had invoices that paid some soft expenses, they were in the contract, so we paid them, and they, you know, and they made up their thing. So we've never done anything that hasn't been appropriate or legal, but we're trying to tighten up the relationship to make sure that we're getting the bang for the buck that we expect. We didn't spend a lot of time, I agree with Representative Smith, we didn't spend a lot of time at the meeting going through that level of detail, but our staff here has gone through with Mr. Mackey, the president of the higher ed, and his people. We have spent that level of detail on what's appropriate and what isn't. And I don't know if that's, you know, that's a debate we can have all the time, is what level of detail the board gets involved with and what is in the executive branch. And I think the executive branch in this case has done a pretty good job of taking this from block grants to where we are now. And that's the only comment I have. I don't know if Deputy Commissioner Metza has been involved in this. You want to come up?
Phillips, yes. Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Commissioner and Representative Sandstead, I was tasked when I came in to work with this issue and finding some semblance to an ongoing solution. And I thought the important things that we had done along the way were what Commissioner Phillips just outlined. And I'm proud of the work the agency's done over a course of time. And with the flexibility that we've given our staff, the current person who's in charge of this is Danae, who you were able to work with to get some of the information. But we've also told her if there's things that you're not feeling good about or something, draw them into your guidelines, run them up to us, and we're very comfortable backing her up in what she seems as seeing the most come through on a day-to-day basis. So we're letting her and empowering her to make those decisions and recommendations to us so we can continually improve the program. I think the big thing that I learned in meeting with President Mackey was that this is, many of these expenses are very typical within a college situation. I had no idea that they happen. And so student life things, I didn't know what qualified when I was going to school. I didn't qualify for a lot of different grants or anything. I was paying cash out of my own pocket and borrowing what I could from my dad. So I think that the college has done a really good job too of going back and making sure that we're communicating back and forth. I know that the program administrators, right down from Mr. Alseth all the way down, or Dr. Alseth all the way down, have been talked to about how we can better improve what we're doing moving forward. And so this is something I think we can keep watching and should keep watching, and we will, to try to continually make improvements that make our expenditures as clean as they can be moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Metza. Any Representative Sandstead?
Maybe for the Commissioner, can you tell me the last time we had any kind of a financial audit done or oversight? I know the audit that you referenced, that was, in my understanding, more of a programmatic audit rather than a financial.
Programmatic audit is, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Representative Sandstead, a programmatic audit is of what's appropriate and what's...
but it's not a financial audit, correct?
No, but the college is audited annually financially by an outside auditing firm, so that information should be available to you directly from the college, I think.
Correct.
Mr. Mackey said he could provide you with any audits, and we haven't had any triggers to any kind of financial issues at all with any of our payments. I mean, we do it in pretty succinct blocks, so there's not a lot to audit. I mean, we get invoices and we pay on the invoices. I don't know what you're looking for more specifically. I don't know what you mean by an audit. A program evaluation might be actually more appropriate if you're looking for, is something more appropriate or not. A financial audit will only be, is there some money missing somewhere? And I don't believe that that is true at all.
No.
Representative Sandstead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By no means am I've never even suggested that money is missing. I think how we've used the money is questionable. And I'm thinking, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm thinking it's a financial audit that would indicate yes or no, that that's either the case or not the case. And I know since I've been asking questions on this over the last several years, you've always given me the assurance that internally people are looking at it, that the agency is looking at it, and it's always up to snuff. But then when I see the information that I've received, and now we're making changes, that tells me maybe it hasn't been as tight as we want it to be, or it could have been, or should have been. So my question for you is, you know, when was the last time we had a financial audit?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know when the agency had, Bob, have we had a financial audit?
During my term, maybe?
Yeah. It's been a while.
All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, Representative Sandstead, again, with the state SWIFT financial system, there's constantly internal auditing going on. So to have an outside audit of the agency or whatever, there would have to be something that would trigger that. So I've asked management and budget, and they said, well, we just don't go and audit agencies when we don't see anything. They're constantly looking at every transaction is somewhat audited, meaning through the SWIFT system that the state uses. So with all being more, I believe what you're talking about is more what the legislative auditor does. The program evaluation is more around what are you doing, is it appropriate or not? The financial audit is strictly, did the books all balance? Is there any money missing or whatever? And I know that management and budget, because I've asked some questions since you've been inquiring in this area, they see no necessity to do a financial audit of the agency. So I guess options are for somebody to call to have the legislative auditor look at it, could be an outcome. Now usually that's voted on by the legislature. They voted on it when they came and looked at us. I believe that was primarily driven by the whole range trust thing that was going on, but I don't know if you could get a vote of the legislature to audit the higher ed program at IRRRB. I don't know, but
I know that.
Representative Sandstead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably, as you know, in my background of education, I know that school districts are audited financially every single year. The county is audited financially every single year. Many other entities, you know, do the same thing. And I find it surprising an agency with a checkbook the size that we have and the work that we do that, you know, there isn't a requirement for something like that.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's something that you need to deal with at the legislature or maybe with management and budget.
Okay.
But again, I don't believe that any of those entities you mentioned have the similar constant internal auditing going on through this accounting system that the state runs, but I'm certainly not an expert in this area. But
nor am I.
So when you inquired about that, I asked management and budget, you know, we haven't had a financial audit in a long time. Whatever, but we had our programs looked at very succinctly, and I believe the legislative auditor did look at somewhat at the higher ed because they came to me with this issue of the block grants. Why are we block granting money when we don't in any of our other grants? So we pulled that in. So I'm tending to agree with you on some of these things with the college. I just think we've done a pretty good job of tightening this thing up. But I'll listen to the board.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll be the first to tell you that I would love to see us not have to give this funding to the college, and that it should be paid for through the college system itself. In fact, we put in legislation specific to this year that didn't get approved. But I'll also say that this is such a successful program and is so well renowned across the country that at some point in time for us to indicate that we're not supporting it, I think would be a big mistake. The expenditure is up to $870,000, and with the way the commissioner has changed the way they give out the money, it could be less than that, and it won't be more than that. And so I'm very comfortable with it. I know when I made the motion to approve it, and Representative Lehman seconded the motion, I think Representative Sands you were the only no vote on the committee. So I'm not worried about auditing, because I think there's more than enough internal controls within the college system and within the IRRRB that we don't have to be suggesting that people are doing something inappropriate. So Mr. Chairman, will move the resolution for approving this money if that's what you're looking for right now.
Senator Thomasoni moves the resolution 19-029.
Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Support.
Second by Representative Lindsgaard. Representative Sandstead.
Can you tell me what would happen if we tabled this for now and had a little further discussion? Just a reminder to all the board members, the budget that was approved was only given 2 minutes or less when we approved this. And I would like to, maybe as a board, so we all understand, you know, what it is that we are tightening up and why we're tightening it up, and what safeguards are in place that will happen. And I think if we had an opportunity to have that discussion, maybe a working session, something like that, could we come back at some other point and approve this portion of the package?
Representative Sandstead, I'll refer to what Mr. Betchka said earlier, that we probably don't need to pass this. We're advisory, so the commissioner runs this through us. My suggestion to you is that as chair of the Higher Ed Committee, subcommittee, that you work with us throughout the next year working on the next budget, and we can follow this very closely and see what's going on.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Lindsgaard.
And I will just say, throughout the process, you brought up some really good questions that I had, you know, concerns about, and then I reached out to Jason Metza, the assistant commissioner, and also Commissioner Phillips, and they walked through these checks and balances on some of that funding, and I think that it's heading in the right direction, and so that's why I think I support it.
Representative Lehman.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I guess I would just like to commend Representative Sandstead for bringing this to light, because I haven't been involved with the Iron Range Higher Ed Committee since I was commissioner, and I was on there just by virtue of being commissioner, and probably back in the block grant days. And so we've had the one meeting, so I appreciate this, and this will probably get passed today because we are advisory, but as a higher ed committee member, I would like to delve a little further into the details to see how we can improve. And mostly, not because I'm trying to shed any bad light on a very successful program, but because we're trying to reduce our subsidy.
Yes.
And the only way to do that is to know how the money is being spent. So I think that that's an appropriate role for the committee, and I look forward to having those discussions in the future.
And I would agree with that, Representative Lehman, and I think that since the legislative auditor did what we did from the past findings, I think we've seen a significant tightening up of this budget in that time since that's happened anyway. So, but I agree with you. Let's follow it close down the road. Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I pledge that, I'd like to see this move on so we can complete our contract with the college in a timely fashion. But I would be more than welcome having more non-legislative session meeting where we're not in a rush with the Higher Ed Committee and bring the college in and go through the expenditures in the greatest level of detail. Be happy to do that.
Mr. Smith.
If I could please, Mr. Chair, thank you. And Representative Sandstead, as chair, as you see fit of calling that group together, we'll be happy to facilitate that in any way. I don't want to end on a less than stellar note with the program, because I agree with Representative Lehman and Senator Thomasoni. It has been wildly successful since its inception, and aside from the being named one of the global leaders in innovative engineering education recently in a paper by MIT, just a couple of highlights. This would be the 15th generation that has graduated as of May of this year. 138 students in total now have their engineering degrees on the range, and over 70% of them are working right here on the range. So we've grown our own and been able to keep them here. They have a 95% pass rate. There's currently 91 students in the program. 85% of those students have come from right here in our backyard. 85%, which also leaves the other percent that is starting to come from outside the region, spending their parents' dollars in our service area. 28% of Iron Range IRE graduates are women. That's almost 2 times the national average of engineering schools. 24% of them are students that are considered non-traditional students, which is also incredible. They have a 100% pass rate on the professional engineer exam, which is an exam that you take to actually become a professional engineer. Just getting your bachelor's degree in engineering does not make you a professional engineer. There's years of study that go into passing that exam. And the last 4 sets of graduates have 100% placement before they've even graduated. So just keeping that in mind. Do we have issues we need to work out? Absolutely. But it is an outstanding program.
Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is on resolution 19-029. All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, same sign?
No.
Motion carries. Number 9 on the agenda, resolution 19-030, Iron Range School Consolidation and Cooperatively Operated School Account.
Slide over.
Proceed, Mr. Smith. I might remind you, I don't think I was remiss on this at the start, but when you testify, just state your name when you have something to say. Mr. Smith, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This project consists of 6 independent school districts located within the service area of the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation. They're asking $350,000 to cover instructor wages, supplies, transportation, program evaluation for a science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics summer institute for students in grade 5 through 8 for the pilot year. The school districts of Hibbing, Chisholm, St. Louis County, Mountain Iron Buell, Mesaba East, and Ely are collaborating to create a project, a pilot project that consists of a series of unique summer institute learning experiences open to students throughout the participating districts. The districts involved in this collaboration recognize that each district has strengths and challenges in their ability to offer a wider range of course offerings in career and technical education and enrichment courses and increased academic rigor. The districts believe that by approaching this project as a united group, they can successfully expand their course offerings, develop career pathways, increase industry exposure, and enrich student experiences while increasing student awareness of the career opportunities that exist in our region. Over the past 9 months, meetings have been held with superintendents, principals, board members, union presidents, and teachers with a focus on collaboration, common bell schedules, common calendars, and finding new ways to increase curriculum to meet the needs of today's students. A result of these meetings is the project that is before you. A total of 18 summer institutes will be offered in these STEAM areas, and there's actually a sheet inside your packet that shows you which projects or institutes are going on, their enrollment, and what their location is. The programming has been developed and offered by local teachers within school districts. Programming, lunch, transportation will be offered at no cost to current students. The total project budget is $396,000, and the remaining costs will be covered by the school districts and a contribution from the Owens Foundation. By piloting the first year of the Summer Institute, the intent is to prove interest in the concept and develop a sustainability plan that will lead to the expansion of the program into grades 5 through 12 and increase the integration of programming with the Applied Learning Institute and career pathways and the inclusion of summer internship opportunities. I have with me Superintendent of Schools for Mountain Iron Buell and St. Louis County Schools, Reggie Ingebrigtsen, and staff members.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Commissioner, thank you for having us. So kind of just to piggyback on Mr. Smith, just a little bit of history. 7 years ago, we had 8 superintendents who got together to talk about offering professional development day for teachers during that week of August, workshop week. And we were able to collaborate to offer teachers more professional development that met their needs. And this is our 7th year this August. We'll have our 7th Professional Development Summit where we've grown to 12 districts, bringing 1,000 educators together, offering 4 different breakout sessions of different professional development. And kind of a spin-off of that, if you will, we had 6 districts this past fall talk about how can we offer different opportunities for students that maybe they don't have those opportunities within their school area. So we started out with grades 5 through 8, and we do have 18 camps that just started on Monday. It's spread throughout the entire summer using the resources of the schools that we currently have that have been that sit empty in the summer. We have 233 students signed up for these camps, and we have teachers who typically don't teach during the summer. We are paying them their daily rate of pay to provide these camps. We sent out a proposal in the spring to see what their interest was. Today I have 2 teachers with us that can answer questions. One is currently doing a camp this week, and one starts her camp on Monday. So again, opportunities within that STEAM, the science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And before I let them speak, I just want to talk about one of the camps that we have currently going on up in Northeast Range. It's called Camp Broadway. And we have students coming from 6 different schools within 14 days learning how to put on a musical, and then they will put on a production on Friday, June 21st for the public. That camp will also be offered at Merritt in their auditorium for students on that side of the range. So whether it's robotics or out in the school forest or again the arts. So it's just been a great opportunity so far. We're offering 1,500 free breakfasts and lunches for the students, and again, free transportation. So if a student from Chisholm wanted to go to a camp at Northeast Range, transportation is being provided. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Abrams. Either the educators want to have anything to say?
So I'm a 4th grade teacher in the district and a camp instructor. My camp is Cook and Create, and it's a life skills based camp. We made pasta and bread and just sort of these simple things that students might not have the opportunity, that it's not hard and you don't need equipment, but just the knowledge. And then we did some sewing things and just a real life skills based camp.
My camp is coding and robotics, and we start on Monday, and the plan is just to give these kids experiences in coding and problem solving and designing and planning and working together and some critical thinking, and so I'm really excited to start that. And I also have students coming from all over, from all different schools.
Senator Thomasoni.
When I go home after this, I'm going to be making spaghetti all the time.
It's easy.
It is, okay. And coding, it's like there's a huge need for it. Is that correct? And
yes.
So what age are these kids?
5th, 6th, 7th grade. Anything.
They're learning to code already.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I teach 3rd grade, and I also had my 3rd graders doing it this year. So we were coding.
Senator Thomasoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the coding that you do in the 3rd grade, is it? What is it? Is it just like an hour a day or an hour a week, or as opposed to what you're doing specialized?
Yeah, we worked on it an hour a week for about 6 weeks. So it was
6 weeks.
Yeah.
And these kids pick it up right away.
Oh yeah. I learn a lot from them, actually.
So, and then how long will this camp last?
Mine is a week, 5 days.
Representative Sansted.
I'm being elevated in this meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are the kids in camps only for an hour a day, or is it like an 8-hour day and they go between different activities? How does that work?
Mr. Chair and Representative Sansted, it's a 6-hour, 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, and then we provide 2 hours a day of prep for the teachers. So the teachers are paid for 8 hours, but each camp is from 9 to 3.
Okay. Mr. Chair, how are the 6 school districts selected?
It was just based on interest as we had a discussion with superintendents and who wanted to collaborate and kind of looking at logistically and transportation-wise. So again, we feel that it's going to grow next year. We want to expand to grades 9 through 12. We again want to use the resources of those empty schools, the ALI equipment that's sitting there, and that will expand to more superintendents. They're all aware of it. So if other districts want to join us to give opportunities for the high school students to do some internships and work with equipment that maybe they don't have the opportunity during the school year.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. I know that Virginia and Eveleth Gilbert are not part of the collaboration efforts. Had they, and there's a strong central core of our, range school districts participating. Had they been approached?
Yep, they were involved in the meeting that we had last fall with superintendents and school board members and teachers and principals, so they were involved. They were given the brochure, sent home. We do have some Virginia students who are attending, but they were given the brochure and the registration link to send home.
Okay.
And also Nashua Kewanee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm curious how you have arrived at your dollar figure, because through this legislative session, we put in a bill for this event. I was the chief author on that, and it was a $2 million ask, and then we were hoping we could get it through the Education Committee, and it was reduced to $800,000 or $850,000, and it ultimately did not pass. But when you came and testified at those meetings, you said, that would be kind of for ongoing sustainability type of things. The districts were in a good place to make this happen regardless. So tell me a little bit more about your ask today.
So the ask that, Mr. Chair and Board, so the original ask was to go for 2 years and then again to look at next year as we expand into those high school programs. At this point, we're just asking for the dollars for this summer for the camps that we have, and then we'll review and see how many students showed up in the beginning of camp, how many KIT students were there at the end of camp, how did it go, survey the teachers. Again, all these camps are linked to the standards, so did we have learning targets, did we meet the standards, and then we'll have to look at how can we expand for next year. So the recommendation was to kind of focus on what do we need this summer to make this happen.
Mr. Chair, had the districts already budgeted for this cost going into this summer, regardless of whether we got this money or not?
No. Mr. Chair.
They had not?
So if the dollars don't come, we had again approached the legislature about this. If the dollars don't happen today, then we'll have to tap into our general funds.
Okay.
Representative Sandstead.
Thank you. And then I'm looking at attachment B on the budget. There's different expenses that are itemized. The Institute Coordinator, who is this?
Mr. Chair, that is one of the principals that we have coordinating this, who put the spreadsheets together, got the links out, communicated with the teachers, and so that first column is our in-kind.
Our in-kind?
The applicant, I mean the funds that, I shouldn't say in-kind.
So, right, there's a dollar, thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a dollar figure, attached with most of these. So I guess I'm wondering, who is the individual? How was that person, how did you arrive at that person being the coordinator?
Mr. Chair, one of the principals indicated interest in helping us coordinate that, so that again, it wouldn't fall onto the superintendent. So he helped coordinate. We sent out the survey to teachers for proposals. He gathered that information, contacted the teachers. Are you still interested? Put the link together, the brochure together. We sent that home. Did we have interest? So what are the numbers for that of parents, number of students who signed up for the camps? Coordinating with INAC for the meals so that we can provide the breakfasts and lunches, coordinated with the transportation directors for transportation.
Okay, Mr. Chair?
Representative Sandstead.
It's all on the same item. I have lots of questions, if that's okay. The fiscal host, who is that?
Mr. Chair, that's Chisholm. Is the fiscal host.
And what does a fiscal host do?
So they are the ones that collected the information needed from the teachers to pay them their wages, and will pay the teachers and pay out the costs for the camps.
Okay, and advertising, how did you advertise for this? Thank you.
Through the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, many questions, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Advertising, how did you advertise for this?
Mr. Chair, we put together the flyers that are included in your packet. We also tried to use social media to the best of our ability. Facebook, putting in ads in the paper, sending out brochures to the districts, sending them home with students.
Very good. Mr. Chair, and you said you had 233 students enrolled right now?
Yes.
Wonderful. Expense, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Expense number 8, administration coordination for $10,000. What is this? And who is this?
Mr. Chair, that is the in-kind time for myself and Superintendent Blanchard to help coordinate camp.
Mr. Chair? So this $10,000 is compensating you, compensating the both for that? What is the 10,000, how is the 10,000 being used? If it's an in-kind?
Mr. Chair, this, and board members, this is in-kind. We are not being compensated, but it's the amount of time that we have put in during our day-to-day work as superintendents to help coordinate this and organize it, and so we are not being compensated this month.
Mr. Chair?
Representative Sandstead.
You're not being compensated, but you're asking for that amount in your overall ask? No? Okay. And then, Mr. Chair, expense number 9. Who is doing the evaluation? Is that an independent evaluation? Is that internal? How is that going to work?
Mr. Chair and board, that would be a survey of the teachers. We have email addresses of the parents. We can reach out to them to survey. We want to know from the teachers, how did they feel it went? Again, the numbers of students who arrived in the beginning. Did we have consistency with attendance throughout the camp? The standards that were met. So again, evaluating, was this a successful endeavor with grades 5 through 8?
Thank you.
Representative Lizagard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think that this is it's a pilot, right? So there'll be growing pains and understanding and knowledge gained throughout. So I think this is a wonderful pilot program. I think that our kids need to have exposure to both soft skills and others. So I encourage you to continue to move forward. I would have hoped that we would have been able to pass it legislatively to get that money, even if it was $800,000. I don't know necessarily if this long-term IRRRB funding is right. I can honestly say that. But for this moment, as a pilot, I think it's a wonderful, and I thank each and every one of you for doing it.
Commissioner. Yeah, so when I was exposed to this, when Representative Sandstead, did you do this in the Senate? I can't remember, but was exposed to it, I had reservations, about the sustainability and things, but I do have to say, the more I talked to my staff about it, and when my eyes were open to the fact that it also provides some opportunity for exposure to careers that has been lacking since education funding was cut 10, 15 years ago dramatically. So all the transportation money went away, so students don't get the trip. I was telling Representative Lister earlier today, when I was in the 3rd grade in the Eveleth schools, I went to the paper mill in International Falls to see paper being made. I don't know if any of our students in my class ended up working at a paper mill, but I mean, you need this kind of exposure, especially in that later elementary years, I think, in, what I call the junior high years and things. So you get a picture of where you're going. So if we can make inroads in this exposure to careers through these camps, maybe that's the redeeming thing that kind of got me on board of supporting it to this point. But I think we really have to work on sustainability, because our collaboration fund can't be the long-term funding for this. So we'll have to figure that out.
Senator Bach.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the Senate, in their wisdom, included $802,000 in our Senate education bill that passed the Senate. And somehow our House colleagues weren't able to get it over the finish line in conference committee. So we'll make another run at it in the Senate next year, and we really, I think this is pretty exciting for our young kids. Superintendent Britson, congratulations. I mean, they're going to get an opportunity to get exposed to some things that they otherwise wouldn't get exposed to. And the time to do that is when they're young. So I don't think it's what I was envisioning when the Senate passed this school fund back in 2014, but it's a pretty innovative idea. And I'm not so sure that keeping it going is all that questionable. It's a new crop of students every year. So I'm looking forward to the survey and see how it's received by the teachers and by the parents, actually. I care a little less about what the kids might think. But good luck with it, and I hope you get good participation. I look forward to hearing about the results. And as long as I have the floor, Mr. Chairman, congratulations to the parents of elementary kids in Gilbert, Eveleth, and Virginia for passing that bond issue on May 14th. That generation of young people that are going to attend that new school are going to get an exposure to a high school education that we haven't had here maybe for a while, and I hope better than we've ever had. So my congratulations. You probably got to look pretty hard to find a place in the state with more parochial communities than on the Iron Range. But I'm pretty proud of the fact that by some pretty big numbers, in smaller numbers, but even in Gilbert, passed that. And I think it's wonderful.
Thanks, Senator Buck. Representative Sandsted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a teacher, I'm very excited to see this programming happening for our students. It seems, especially on the range, that we have a shortage of activities unless you're part of a Y, and different communities don't have those types of options to offer families and the students. So I think this is great, and when I'm asking questions, it's not casting dispersions on the programming or what you're doing. I just want to understand it better. The other thing I'd like to comment on is the funding source, this collaborative fund. I don't think that this originally, when the fund was created, was the intent of how it would be used. I'm not saying it's not an appropriate use of it by any means. What I am going to say is I think we just need to be cautious. I know that there are schools, for example, Nashwauk-Keewatin, there are elementary schools, there are high schools that students are packed in. The conditions, the standing water that I think Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner Metsa saw, that is like in spaces that they have to use. I wouldn't put my kids in there. I wouldn't put my kids in those rooms at all. And the administration and the staff is working so hard, and there's going to be more asks coming forward on probably facility requests, either new facilities or major renovations. And I want to make sure that we have the money in the account when districts can start to find a way to collaborate to kind of solve these issues, that we've got the money there for them to do that, because it's expensive and it's going to become a real need real soon.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to that point, I am going to be a no vote on any school district that brings a proposal here to just build a new building to replace an existing one. That is not what this account was created for. If a school district, Nashwauk-Keewatin or otherwise, wants a new school building, they should go to the voters for a referendum like Grand Rapids did. The state will pay a big chunk in debt service equalization aid, not so much for St. Louis County when they did it because of the level of tax capacity they have, but there is a way to get a new school building. You just convince the voters you need one. And it doesn't have to have this fund. If people want to keep doing what they're doing in their community, then have a referendum and pay for it.
Appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Go ahead.
Senator Thomasoni.
Well, you go ahead. She's brought up to this point. Go ahead.
Representative Sandsted.
Absolutely. I think a referendum is appropriate, but you know, we have used funds out of this to support some of those activities, and I just want to make sure that we have that intact.
Senator Thomasoni.
So a referendum would be appropriate, and we just did a referendum, but we actually gave some money from this particular account to help it, and we've done it with several other different school districts. But that's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say is that the reason I brought up the coding was because a number of years ago I was actually out in Washington, and I was at Microsoft's headquarters. And now I don't know if it's still the situation today, but at the time they were telling us that 1 million jobs go unfulfilled every year because they don't have enough coders. And these coders make they start out at like $90,000. So it's pretty interesting that you're doing it with third graders and getting these kids interested, and that we're doing a summer camp on it. And I think it's a pretty good indication of some of the things that we're trying to do across the Iron Range and getting kids ready for the jobs that are out there in society. And I think this is really a pretty neat thing that we're doing here.
Any other discussion? Liz Lagarde moves house file. Resolution 19030, second by Bach. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Number 10, FY20 budget. Mr. Buska and Mr. Scruffy. Welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Chairman, board members. We're happy to be here today to present our upcoming fiscal year budget. A couple of things were different for you in the presentation of the budget and the introduction. Just want to make a few comments about that before we begin. In preparation for the fiscal year 20 budget, the agency has been conducting strategic planning and evaluation activities over the last 5 months. We've worked pretty diligently internally here with our staff and with others to advance our work to the point that we were able to align our funding with the agency's core goals. And so you saw a presentation of that in the budget document on page 3. It's a little bit different view than we've had traditionally, which is a representation of programs, projects, Giants Ridge, and then our fixed costs. So we've instead aligned this with our funding priorities as is requested in statute now when we prepare a strategic plan. We look forward to completing our 4-year plan under the upcoming administration of Commissioner Phillips, and that will be concluded in the next few weeks, and we are looking forward to sharing that with you and getting your feedback at that time. I have Bob Scuffy here today to walk you through the budget document, and we can answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if you could refer to page 4 for the budget. Right now we are asking for a $41 million budget and our resources available about $44 million. This is the last year of the hit for the 3-year average on the production taxes, which you know, it did go up $4 million from last year, but what's interesting is next year we're going to go from the 18 million up to 26 million, you know, projected just for the operating, the, you know, board and TAC. And then the next year, we'll be back at full capacity in 28 million. So we have some good news coming in the next couple of years, but you know, this is the last year of the hit, but you know, we reflected the budget, you know, to align to that. So right now we're projecting a carry forward in at about 8.8 million. And then we get to the current resources, our production taxes. That's the nice thing about our agency is we do know what we're going to get. You know, it's based on fiscal year 18 production at the mines that they pay in 2019 that we reserve, you know, like for 20. So we always know in advance what, unless you guys do some last surprises legislatively at the last minute, but not very often. So production taxes are 18 mil. Our investment earnings are about 2.9 this year. The interest rates have really stunk with the State Board of Investment. We're finally up in the 2% range. You know, when we started last year, we were like 1.5%, so it's significantly climbing. Loan revenues, that's the payback on for principal and interest on our loan portfolio, 2.4. Facilities, the majority of that is Giants Ridge. We have a small section in there just for reimbursements for our office. Occupation tax, Region 3 for the Carleton and Coochin County. You know, that's statutory. You know, we're the fiscal agent for run their 2 grants. You know, we get our little $14,000 for administrating the grant program for them. And then the DJJ Corpus Trust, now we're asking for $6 million to cover 3 different expenses that we'll get into down below on the expenditure side. So let's talk expenses.
Excuse me.
Yes, Representative Lehman.
Can I ask a question on the revenue side before we get to the expense side? Just
Representative Lehman.
All fresh now. So the investment earnings, 2.9, that's the investment earnings off the DJJ fund.
No. That, Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, that is the interest earnings on all of our appropriations. The board tax, not the DJJ. We do independently, yes. Yes, that's it.
Okay, so,
Representative Lehman.
so Mr. Chair, so then, but at the same, okay, because the earnings off the DJJ is what traditionally we had available to us for economic development projects.
Well, okay. Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, let me back up. The earnings made on the DJJ Corpus Trust get posted to the DJJ operating account. And yes, that is included in here. But the interest made on the DJJ, you know, we took the two equity and then the bond funds that we reinvested from the DJJ Trust. That makes its own interest, you know, on those two different accounts. But the small cash that's left, that interest, the interest earnings get exposed to the DJJ operating, which is in here.
Which is in the investment earnings?
Yes.
Okay, and so then, Mr. Chair, so then the DJJ Corpus Trust, that is not the earnings, that is the corpus. We are deliberately taking money out of the corpus.
Yes.
So the question that we should all be asking ourselves is when we get to 26 million next year and 28 million the next year projected taconite production taxes, do we still draw money out of the corpus?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, I hope we don't ever have to draw it out again if we don't have any unfortunate years. I think this might possibly be the last year we get asked for it. And I would say, when you say the earnings, so back in my history here, all the earnings from the DJJ came to here for development projects and things. And there was a point in time, apparently, somebody took some of the money and said, no, those earnings are going to roll over, and we only get the earnings off a small portion of the DJJ. But if you looked at the overall fund, the 100 and what million or 150 million or whatever it is, we are still underspending the true earnings of it. We're not dipping into the principal. Yeah, we really aren't. It looks like we are because they only allow us now to get at a little small portion of the earnings. It used to be about $5 million. I know, it was. We took $5 million for loans every year when I worked here before. So it's set up differently now. And I share, I've told Senator Block this, and I don't think you and I have had this conversation. I share the thing. We do not want to seriously erode the DJJ fund so we don't have resources when we have an opportunity. So I'm on board with all of that, but we've also been trying to manage our way through some really rough times financially and keeping our budget even going down somewhat, but not devastating the operating budget so we don't offer programming, because I'd have a hard time, you know, keeping the staff if we don't have programs to offer, you know. So we've been very frugal about how we do this, and we're willing to talk about, because of the legislative audit, we've done new kinds of way we look at the effectiveness of our programs. So it's hard to, when a program's really effective, to say, you know, we want to get rid of it. So that's why we've been very cautious about dipping into the DJJ funds. And I think this is a reasonable ask this year, and hopefully we don't have to do it again. You know, if we're up that much, we shouldn't have to. Representative Lehman.
One last question then, because so now we're taking some of the DJJ corpus and we're putting it in equity, so we get more return. Does anybody, Bob, maybe have an idea of what our average return is currently on the trust, on the corpus?
Well, Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, I had our principal accounting officer do just for the past year, and we just wanted to see, you know, based on, because the board approved 12 million for the year, and we just used a year. So, you know, basically taking the balance, there was like 195 million. Payments out of 336, production taxes that came in 3.1, you know, receipts 2 million, revenue, investment revenues of 14 million, left a balance of like 215 million. And then with the board approval of the $12 million projects that we did over the past year, you know, we're still getting a return of 7.6 million. So it's significant.
Somebody get the calculator
Just-
out.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just interject. So just if you use a back of a napkin kind of accounting, you said the money in from the taconite production was 3.1 million?
Yeah.
And we still raised the DJJ bottom line after taking 12 million out by 7.6 million.
And so now we are,
Representative
Mr.
Eveleth.
Chair, I'm sorry. So now, just trying to get a handle on where we are with the Corpus. Is the Corpus City right now in excess of $200 million?
No, Mr. Chair, excuse me, Representative Lehman, right now there's the fair market value is 166 million.
166 million.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Please proceed.
Okay. All right. Mr. Chair, members of the board, now we'll get into the expenditure side of the budget. As you know, we're broken down into 4 components. Projects, our program grants, Giants Ridge, and then our fixed costs, you know, our normal office to keep the lights on budget. Projects consist of our development projects. We're budgeting 5.5 million for, you know, new loan development. And remember too, you know, if we run short with the 5.5, we'll always come back to the board and ask for more, you know, throughout the year. Public Works, 6.5 million request, and then an additional Public Works out of the DJJ Trust for $2 million. And of course that can, in our discussion with Representative Lehman too, she brought up a good point that, you know, broadband is a, you know, part of, you know, a type of infrastructure too. So we originally had a line item for broadband, which now we just switched it to, you know, it's Public Works, because that fits. So that 2 million could also include broadband, you know, based on, you know, applications. We're asking for an additional 2.5 million for the trails, again, the regional trails. So a total of 16.5 million total for the projects. Programs, that's, as I mentioned, our program grants. And the narrative really outlines, you know, individual programs, which I'll still go through them, but, you know, starting on page 6, you know, it gives a little outline of all of our programs in more detail and a better understanding.
Senator Buck. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Scuffy, before we move off page 4.
Okay.
We just came off of a pretty difficult legislative session where we built a state budget that's not sustainable over the long haul. We used $491 million out of the state's budget reserve to cover the spending in the tails. I would not have done that. I would have been in the room. And now I look at this, and we're using $6 million out of the corpus to prop up spending, and one-time money, and the estimated carry forward between FY19 and 20 is also going down by $6 million. So it looks to me like this thing is out of balance by about $12 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. And I'm not sure that the growth in the taconite revenues is going to be enough to cover that much of a leap. So I think let's just be careful here. I mean, what we're doing here, and our communities benefit a lot from what we're doing, but it's not sustainable. I mean, there's $12 million of one-time money in this budget. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. We have a structural problem here.
Commissioner Phillips.
I'm not sure that we need to carry forward 8 million. So we'd probably be more, I don't know what our average has been, I would ask somebody, but if, you know, we carried 4.2,
But,
in our
Mr.
original
Chairman,
budget, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, my point is, if we're gonna use 6 million out of the carry
Yeah, I
forward
understand.
to fund the budget, we don't have 6 million next time. We're taking it down to 3.
Yep.
So I just want everybody to be aware of that. There are some lean times coming here, if we don't get our arms around some of the spending, because our revenue's not gonna go up by that much, not by 12 million.
Mr. Scruffy.
Mr. Chair, Senator Bach, I agree with you. I do not like our carry forward that low. Everyone knows that here, but I agree with you, and hopefully it'll be better next year, and we'll keep an eye on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Phillips.
I don't want to say this on blind faith, because we do look out a couple of years to see, and we believe with carry forward, there are things, like our trail budget came from 3.5 million to 2.5 million this year. That could be $1.5 million next year. I don't know. So we are looking at some of these things. We're out on the street seeing what kind of appetite there is for trail projects and what kind of leverage. We're working on the trail stuff on the legislative side, with other state trail money and everything. I don't know that the IRRRB, if we can leverage more of that money, we don't need as much of our own trail programs. So again, we're looking at effectiveness and leverage. We've put a lot, we take this meager amount of money and leverage it up. 7-to-1 today on the grant programs we approved today. I think our trails were 10-to-1 last time.
Mr. Chairman.
So,
Senator Thomas-Tony.
So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Bach and I don't exactly look at this budget the same way, because I think that we have a resource here that is absolutely outstanding, and I'm not really afraid to use money from the Douglas J. Johnson Fund, because that's what it's there for. Now, I understand that sometimes we have to tap into it to use it for operational things here, but at the same time, there's a lot of money in that budget, and I'm absolutely worried about what the future might hold for it as a result of somebody else trying to get to it other than us. So I don't mind using the budget, and the structure that Senator Box was referring to is one thing in the state budget. It's a little bit different here, I think, and I'm not sure they're apples to apples, but at the same time, I feel that we have to do what we have to do to make this place operate, and that the people of the Iron Range should be the beneficiaries of the money that we have here. I'm totally cognizant of the fact that we have to worry about our kids and our grandkids, and that we should have something here for them in the future. But at the same time, this agency needs to operate at a certain level, and I do believe that we have to do what we have to do in order to make it operate efficiently. So I'm fine with the budget, and I'm fine with the way it's going. I do think that the taconite revenues are going to increase in the next couple of years here because of the 3-year averaging, and so there'll be more money available to the agency just out of the production tax. And while I shouldn't get too exuberant about that, because I've seen the whole place crash in 1 month's time, and anything can happen, I'm hoping that that's not what the very near future is. So I'm okay with the budget the way it's going, and I promise to be fiscally responsible in the very near future, and try and make sure that everything works the way it's supposed to.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Lehman.
I'm so happy with this discussion, because this is exactly what an advisory board should be doing, is giving advice, I think. And we need to be looking long-term. I'm very happy to hear the commissioners say that next year we're not going to see $6 million coming out of the trust, because we're going to have that in taconite production tax. I think as much as we can, because we are so up and down, we follow the mining cycle, we just need to be sure that as much as possible we are partnering and not building programs with additional staff. Because I've been in a position where I had to actually lay off staff because we had built large programs with staff. And so I think this agency needs to be, because of the way it's funded, it needs to be flexible and fluid and light on its feet. And so that means partnering with other people and not building large staffs and programs. So,
Mr. Chairman, Just on
Commissioner
that,
Phillips.
I think our complement is 47.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah, I'm not saying.
when I got here it was 75, so I'm not building stuff, believe me.
Mr. Scubby.
Railing off people.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, so we'll get back to the program discussion. 6,305,000 is, budgeted for our normal programs. Community development, which consists of the commercial redevelopment of the, the demolition and removal of commercial property, that's 750,000. The residential redevelopment program is budgeted at 300,000. The residential demo within the communities. Development partnerships, 375. Downtown streetscapes, that was the downtown business corridor. They changed the name. I didn't realize that the website was updated, so I was behind the times, so I matched you in the budget document. 200,000. The BRRR program, we did reduce that down to 1 million based on the need from last year. And then EDA partnership pilot is a new initiative in this budget since we even met. It's a pilot program that's going to be through the Virginia Economic Development Authority to establish a downtown commercial rehabilitation program.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, we're looking at these downtown business corridors having businesses are being failed to be rehabilitated because of code issues. So we're piloting something. We looked at other programs around the state and the country and said they've offered some. It's almost like using a BRRR type incentive. So if a business owner is willing to put some money in the building, we'll come up with some resources. And we want to see how effective it is. Now, Virginia is going to put in more money than us, so I believe their contribution is going to be $350,000, and I think St. Louis County is putting 100 in. Does somebody acknowledge that? Do you remember?
I don't know that they've committed to it.
Okay, but the proposal right now is 350 from Virginia, 100 from St. Louis County, and 250 from us, and then we would develop the guidelines, and then I would see it like our broadband partnerships with Blandon. You don't see those this year. We did those for, I believe, 3 cycles, and we got all our communities ready. I would view that we would try this pilot, and then if it works, we'd reach out to a few other cities. The next year, do a few other cities, and then eventually phase it out once it's ran the course of effectiveness. And this is a benefit we had of the legislative audit. They forced us into really looking at evaluating our effectiveness of our programs, which was a good thing. I said if they hadn't used that audit as a political football to make fun of the IRRRB, a lot of good things came out of the legislative audit. We have our Flux program for managing our grants. We also are evaluating the effectiveness of our program, which we weren't doing before. So there's a lot of good stuff here. And so we do so the program managers have to assess the effectiveness, and then they have to present that to a group of peers internally to make sure that their analysis holds water. And they're very critical of one another, I can tell you. They don't let the other people slide because they're, having to step up and defend their programs. So we've done that now, I think 2 cycles, I believe, of that, 2 years in a row. So we're just getting into and I think we'll get better at it, and we will get more effective programs in the future. So,
Mr. Scubby.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have the workforce development, which is 350. Mine reclamation, 950,000. Culture and tourism, we have our normal grant program for the nonprofits at 350, and then 1,450,000, for the annual Minnesota Discovery Center grant, for them to run their operations. The commissioner program, 300,000, and app fund is 30,000. So that takes care of our programs. And then, of course, we have the occupation tax, the Carlton and Cooch money that matches the revenue from on top. Giants Ridge, 9,590,764, and with an additional 1.5 out of the DJJ Corpus Trust for a capital account. As you know, we've had many discussions on that, you know, with the revenue being down up there with weather, and you know, it's just a constant battle. So they have to keep deferring their equipment and everything year after year after year. And so hopefully with this, you know, ask here that they can get back on board and have a capital budget that works. And then
we are also seeding that. Remember, Dave Kelly who gave a presentation on trying to build a deferred maintenance account at Giants Ridge over time. So this would be the some of this money would go into the down payment to get that going. Just want you to be aware of that. Mr. Scuffy.
Mr. Chair, and then we have our operations and development fixed costs. Like I mentioned, it's basically, you know, the payroll, the lights. We have to correct our FTE count. This budget is 44.13. That is our FTE count for this budget. The payroll also includes, following MMB's recommendation, 2.25 projected cost of living, and then of course a progression increase for, you know, the staffers that are still eligible. You know, I mean, I hit 35 years in April, so I'm happy to just get that little cost of living. I'll take anything. And then 6.8 insurance increase is part of the payroll. You know, and then and just our basic cost to keep the lights on and, you know, run for us to do our work. So that's our $41 million budget. So is there any more questions?
Questions, Representative Lehman?
I got two questions. On the Milan rec, I see that going up, you know, 575 last this year, and next year 950,000. So what's happening at Milan rec?
Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, I have Linda's budget sheet in front of me, and no, that's.
Mr. Chairman, while they're looking that up, I believe we did roll Laurentian Vision Partnership. We rolled a bunch of mining related things into one budget, so that's, you can't look at apples and apples on that one from previous years.
Oh,
is that correct?
I thought Laurentian was always.
It is.
Yeah.
No, but something, we wrote something else.
Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, yes. LVP went up. It was 219, and now they're asking for 350. So they did raise it. They have a new research, data, and mining planning incentive. The dig is 100,000. Emergency repairs 220,000, and then mine pit access, you know, like for beaches, etc., was 100,000, and 20,000 for fish stocking. So that's what totals the 950.
It sounds like some.
Representative Lehman?
Mr. Chair, sorry, some one-time money in emergency repairs. I don't know what that is, but.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that some of that is the growth chamber remodel to make the space usable for things.
I can follow up with Linda to find out what's going on. And then, of course, I have to ask my Giants Ridge questions, because I don't think we've ever had such low operating revenues at $3 million, yikes, $3,900,000. And I'm just looking back at 2019, 18, 19, probably had one of the best winters, if you like snow. We had lots of it. So I'm wondering, is that the golf? Is it the skiing? What's down?
Mr. Scuffy.
Mr. Chair, I have Dave Callio behind me, and he's their chief accountant up there, and I'd like to invite him up to talk a little more about it.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
Welcome, Mr. Callio. Please proceed. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman. That's basically the revenues are down for the extraordinary event in the golf course. The ski revenues are climbing. The golf course had the winter kill. It cost us over $1 million in revenue loss because of the winter kill. That's huge. Along with food and beverage, that's another $300,000.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out though that we're starting out this year on a positive note, right?
Right, everything this year looks good.
Yeah.
And the revenue projections, they got a lot of new groups coming in this year. Already 40 of them booked that have never been here before. A lot of positives. The ski revenue, that, if you analyze it, continues to climb slowly. The operations of Giants Ridge, over the years, you know, we know that's been climbing the operating loss. When I look at it, I separate everything. You take the projects out, you take the capital out. The operations slowly climbed. We changed the model, and in 1 year, when you separate out the operation, cost declined by almost $500,000. If it wasn't for the golf course, I would think it would have went down another couple $100,000 this year. Next year, I think you'll see a difference between this year and next year, probably $1 million to the good in the operations, from what I see right now.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out that we're just this summer going into our meetings with guest services on the progress they've made and what they're proposing for progress for the future year. So when we have a next board meeting, at some board meeting in the future, we'll come back to you with what kind of, have a full report on how we're feeling about it. But as he pointed out, we had $500,000 in payroll improvement already, and then and that's kind of apples to apples. They're running the place the same way we ran it before with their services. So, but we now want them to look at other things. And I've always been more on being very cognizant of expenses, but also growing revenue. I don't know why we can't do better at Giants Ridge. We have seen, like you say, the ski revenue is going up. If we can have a decent golf year, then we've made some significant progress, I think.
Well, Mr. Chair, I have read, and I don't have the numbers at hand right now, but it's a significant decrease in the number of golfers in the state of Minnesota. I mean, from the time that Giants Ridge was built out to today, it's just significant drop. Young people are just not taking up golf anymore, so it's a struggle. And I know the ski hill never quite paid for itself. I don't know where it is now. Can I just ask?
Sure.
If you look, is the ski hill paying for itself yet?
Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, it depends on how you look at it. If you look at the ski season alone, ski operations, take out the rest of the costs out of it, you made $340,000 in the 4 months. Now you got the rest of the 8 months that gets charged off. It's not really ski anymore, it's called recreation. So now you got the bike trails, the summer rentals, the bike rentals, everything is a recreation department. So when you start breaking it down, the ski hill turned a profit $80,000 more than last year for the same time period. That's net. That's not revenue, that's net. So it's definitely going in the right direction. And then people, I judge it by people too, because even with the golf courses down last year, the amount of people that came to Giants Ridge only changed by maybe 500 people that we can account for. You're up at the 110,000 visitor mark. Last year, you're just a hair over it. This year, if you don't have any of the golf problems, you're probably going to be closer to 125,000 people. That's visitors that we can account for. So you gotta look at it different ways to see if it's improving or not improving. It's not just the dollars going up, because most of the dollars increases and changes year to year is project or capital. I mean, there's over 50 capital and projects in this budget for this year, which is high. That's a lot of projects for a staff to do.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out too that we're hoping the high-speed lifts, the detachable lifts, will help us on the mountain bike. We haven't even hardly seen any mountain bike revenue yet, but we should start seeing that this year. And that's another return we can get off the expenditure we put in those lifts. If we just get them for the winter, if we can use them year-round and get revenue from them for the gravity feed mountain bike trails that we've put in, that's more return. And I always caution people, we're not going to do this every year. So about 3.5 years ago, we did an economic impact study on Giants Ridge. Just in the local zip codes, about $44 million worth of economic impact annually. And the subsidy at that time, non-capital, I believe, was $1.2 million or something north of $1 million. And I remember the numbers so distinctly because they were on the front page of the Star Tribune about every week, you know, coming. And so we did the economic impact study, and the local taxes paid just to the local units of government from the private investment up there of $45 million are more than our annual investment. So it's 2.1, I believe was the number, 2.2. So what I said at the time, we want to drive that economic impact up. That's the important number. So how is Giants Ridge adding? Because Representative Lisgar reminds me, I wonder what the East Range would look like if we hadn't done the Giants Ridge project. You know, if LTV would have shut down, we hadn't done Giants Ridge, what would it look like over there right now? So this is a vital part of our thing. We can't just, but I know we have to make it operationally more responsible and reduce costs and increase revenues and everything, but we gotta drive that economic impact up. If it was 44 3 years ago, I'm hoping we'll do another analysis in a couple more years when we get guest services have their feet under them a little better. I hope it's $50–60 million a year. And I said at the groundbreaker at the event we had, why can't it be 100? I don't know. I mean, if we play our cards right and we make the right investments and gain control of some more of the revenue stream. I know that was one of the problems up there. We had all the cost drivers and everybody else had all the profit drivers on the property, and we're trying to rein those in now. So I'm optimistic about Giants Ridge. I know that's not a popular position sometimes, but I think that place it's delivered quite a bit of economic benefit, and I think it can deliver a lot more over time if we play our cards right.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's good to hear. I mean, it's just important that we have goals, you know, measurable goals that we want to get to, and it sounds like the trend lines on the operational costs are going in the right direction, and that's what we were trying to achieve with this private entity, I would say, not having state employees as a part of the overhead. So that's good to hear. I just want to stay on top of that and make sure that we all love Giants Ridge, we all love the economic benefit, but we have to make sure that we're responsible with the public dollars that are going into it. So, thank you.
Representative Sandstead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Giants Ridge, I think it was at our budget meeting last year that Representative Lehman had asked a meeting specifically on Giants Ridge, and one of the questions I had that was going to be answered at that meeting, and we didn't have the meeting, was I was looking for a breakdown on the ski as to how much of the revenue was coming in from local population versus outstate population, and if we had any information on that. We didn't then. Do you have any more of that information now?
Mr. Chair, Representative Sandstead, we have the season pass stuff with your majority of it's local. That's at about $343,000 for this fiscal year. That's up $100,000 from the previous year. I don't specifically have where the rest of it comes from, but I might be able to find out. They do have ways, because a lot of it's online now, you can buy it, so we can have someone look into that.
Mr. Chair?
Representative Sandstead.
The reason I'm asking is we had a conversation last year around advertisement and targeting our advertisement. If we had an idea of, where our revenue was coming from specifically, maybe those dollars could be targeted in a way that might drive that up a little bit, our revenues up.
Oh, Representative Sampson.
I have questions in other areas. Do you want to take it as a section at a time, or?
Let's go to Representative Lisberg first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just say that we are truly blessed to have Giants Ridge in our region. Has it been operating at a high level the whole time? No. Could have we made capital investments years ago so they didn't stack up on us? Probably. But I think moving forward, we could leverage this in a very, very positive way for our state and for where we live. So I thank Commissioner Phillips and the state of Minnesota for making that investment, right? So I do agree that we could be watching things, but I think they've done a really, really good job. And you talk about the high-end resorts over there. I think if we sold it and we were very, very positive about this and we helped promote it ourselves, from an agency standpoint, from a representative standpoint, or a senator, I think it even helps it even more. And then that's what I would encourage this board to do. So you can send some of them high-end people, resorts over there, tell them to come over to Giants Ridge, golf a couple rounds of golf, and stay over there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In many places on this budget, there are areas where we have a dollar figure under the fiscal 2019 budget, then we have the projected, and in the fiscal 2020 budget, there's a significant change. One area that I'll start with is development projects. We last year had budgeted $7 million for it. At the end of this month, we figured we'll have spent somewhere about 3.9 roughly. Mm-hmm. And then looking forward, we're putting in 5.5. So we're increasing, it's less than what we had done a year ago. We're increasing what we actually are coming in at the end of this year. Are there additional projects that we're planning on or something like that? And then the second half of that question is, why are we spending less than we're budgeting for on these projects?
Mr. Chair, Representative Sandsted, well, it's unknown at the time, our loan portfolio is based on applications. And Matt, would you like to expand on this question?
Sure.
Please come up.
Chair.
Dave was there.
Mr. Schoberg.
Matt Schoberg. To answer your question, I think this year we had a historically low level of loan projects, as Bob was saying. It's by demand, and if you compare year on year, this past year with about $4 million was lower than it typically is. Frankly, I had hoped that this year's budget would be a little bit higher than the 5.5, because looking at the pipeline, looking at the stuff that we have going, we certainly hope to spend all of that and have to come back and ask for more, frankly. But it's hard to, if you can budget so much for public works grants, and you typically have the demand to put all the money out, but when it's loan projects, it's to find the appropriate projects.
Okay.
Thank
you, Mr. Chair. Under the Public Works and the DJJ Trust, I'm wondering, am I correct that we took what we had a line item for before in terms of broadband into Public Works? That is correct?
Mr. Chair, Representative Sandsted, yes. When we had met, remember we had $2 million set for broadband, and then Representative Lehman brought up the good point that broadband is infrastructure, you know, and we rethought that and came back and changed it. So yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out on that one. There's also, we didn't know if the legislature was going to approve their statewide broadband, border-to-border broadband money. And really, we'd have more demand for our local match pot, that's what I call our 2 million, if the state invested heavily in broadband, because there's always a requirement for local match. We didn't know at the time we were beginning this budget. So having it hanging out there as broadband, what if we didn't have demand for it? That money would just sit there. But if we put it in the public works pot, I guess if there weren't competitive broadband projects, there would be competitive sewer and water projects. So we thought putting it in there, and that's really what happened.
Mr. Chair?
I
understand that. I just, as I have spent time, you know, down in St. Paul, and I listen to my constituency and really look at economic development, broadband is the one thing that is holding us back in this area in so many ways. It is it is infrastructure without a doubt, but it's what we're lacking in so many areas. And I'm hesitant. I'd like to see that there's a way that we could have broadband earmarked for that money to be used specifically for build out of broadband projects and to bolster our economic development by putting that infrastructure in there. My concern is if we just throw it into the infrastructure pot, that's going to get eaten up easily with aging sewer lines and water lines and that easily, and we'll take care of that, but we won't necessarily have it for broadband and economic development in that area.
Mr. Chairman, broadband projects are fairly expensive, and they will require, like I mentioned, border broadband money, and the providers put in significant investment. So I believe that amount of leverage will put the broadband projects at the top of the list, not the opposite.
Okay. So
I believe that they will be a priority, and probably if they're there to be funded.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the budget that we're looking at in our packet is quite a bit different than the breakdown, basically, that we had been given in April. In our April packet that we had seen, or the legislators had been given to kind of preview the budget or whatever, there was an expense for an individual who had received a severance and had been brought back for 6 months, then an additional year. And now it was in that budget. Where is it in this budget? In the one that we're looking at?
Mr. Scoffey.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, Representative Sandsted, that would be in the payroll line under the...
On page 11?
Let's see.
Yeah,
the last page, under the wages and benefits. The reduction would be in that $4,233,000 line, the very first line.
Go one more.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair.
Representative
My question is then, are we continuing to have that individual as part of the IRRRB after having received a retirement package, a severance package, and it'll be 2 additional years then continuing to be brought back on? And I think the commissioner's word to us was it was just short term, it was 6 months, then without notice it was a year, and now we're looking at an additional year.
Mr. Scoffey.
Mr. Chair, Representative Sandsted, that position will be done on July 31st. It is not budgeted, and it's known to everybody that it's finished.
It's 1 month.
Yeah, 1 month into the fiscal year to follow that contract, and we talked about that in the cities, and that's what we did. We came back, and it's the year went to the 1 month to fulfill the current contract, and that's what this budget reflects.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will it be covered under any type of different contract going forward, or is it we're done?
Mr. Scuffy, I'll comment on that. The state of Minnesota in their agencies has a program called the PRO program. They recommend if you have part-time hires with expertise in an area to your agency, that you hire people temporarily that come out of retirement because they have that expertise. So it may happen or it may not. But that's a program. I've checked with several agencies. They use it a lot, and they use it to save money because they don't have to put a full-time FTE on. They don't have to worry about benefits or any of that other stuff. They can hire a person with expertise in that area to work that area.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Sandstead.
Under that scenario, do those individuals typically receive severance packages then?
Representative Sandstead, I have no idea on that. But I do know that it's recommended by the agencies. Commissioner Phillips.
Mr. Chair, we don't know the answer to that because we don't have access to the information on who's been hired at other agencies. But I would tell you we did not put the individual in question on the PRO plan before we talked to management and budget to see if there was any problem with that person getting an early retirement incentive, and they said the two things are not tied together whatsoever. Now, the decision here was more we were going to move that individual from half-time to a quarter time because this has been a handoff from that individual to Linda on the mining issues. So we were envisioning slowly weaning it, and we just made the decision when there was some concern about this that quarter time's 11 hours or something we're talking. So we decided just to end it right there. Now I would say if there's a lot going on in mining right now, you know, we've got the Esser deal with Mesaba Metallics going on, we have Magnetation bankruptcy, we have Mesaba Nuggets down and trying to bring that back, we have Scram Mining people approaching us. And if we need any expertise beyond what we have internally, we will probably have to put out an RFP in the state register and hire some expertise. But we do not have a PRO plan or anything to bring any employees back at this time. And I would assure you, even though I might not have to do this, I would not do it without coming back to the board and having a discussion about it. Okay? We're pretty transparent here about this stuff, so.
Mr. Chairman, you don't have to bring that request back to the board from me. I can just tell you, state agencies do this all the time. Cops retired 50 years old and they work another 10 years, drawing their pension, doing something else. I mean, this is common across state government. School superintendents, I mean, who doesn't work in school superintendents? My goodness. You can't tell if they even retired because they keep working for another district. I mean, and there, to the commissioner's point, there is a lot going on out there relative to potential mining opportunities. And I don't know what's the future of HIPTAC's going to be, but I hope, heck, we got some people at this agency that we can employ to make sure that HIPTAC makes the transition beyond their current mine plan. I mean, there's plenty to do.
No, but Mr. Chairman, I just got a call from the governor's office, and they want to have us sit in on talking about the state's support for the Sioux locks. And the only person here that has any experience in that is the one that is going to be done on July 31st. So I told them they better get the meeting scheduled pretty soon. So I'm worried that we're going to bump into this down the road, but we'll just take it one day at a time and see what happens.
Mr. Chair.
Sandstead.
Under professional technical services, we had 401,500, and we're projected to spend 260,000, almost 261, and next year we're up to 496.5. Again, if we're so under there, we're budgeting more than we had even budgeted the year prior, and we haven't even spent half that. Why the dollar figure?
Mr. Chair, Representative Sandstead, we have a lot going on. You know, this new strategic planning process, you know, we might have more guests come in, more professional services, you know, to have more group discussions. The growth chamber you know, with the shade house and everything is gonna need more architectural work, and that's under a PT. So there's stuff going on, you know, that even though just, you know, because what we did this year doesn't mean that we're not gonna do, you know, more next year, and that's.
Mr. Chairman, I can, so, we do a zero-based budgeting. This isn't like we take last year's budget and say, are we gonna up it a little bit or reduce it? So we look at, so we had all our budget managers turn in what they thought their need for professional technical. Right. And Bob brought up some good points. So we are also looking at, you know, we have issues at Giants Ridge with the, we were proposing some kind of Nordic Center over by the hotel, and the hotel's struggling, so we're probably going to spend some time looking at that whole situation to see if we could save some money by doing something different. So again, professional technical people. Growth Chamber was another one, but I mean, so everybody turned in their things, and then our leadership group challenged them. Do you really need this? Do you need that? And that's how we came up with the number. We didn't come up with, well, we had 400 last year, let's add 150,000 or something. So it's zero-based budgeting. And if you know, and so I think they provided, today somebody asked me or showed me that there's a list of what we did in the past. If you ever want to know who we have under contract, again, it's transparent.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's not a question of transparency. My question is, we budgeted X amount. We spent just about half of that. And then instead of maybe using that first budget amount, we've even increased it, though we haven't even spent half of what we had done. So I'm, again, just curious, like, why add to a budget that you haven't even spent when you didn't hit that original target? Even, I mean, there's still a lot of room in there for additional activities and...
Mr. Chair, Representative Sandsted, because that is this year. This is, like the Commissioner just explained too, it's based on new need that we have coming up, new things in the pipeline, you know.
Okay.
This year, you know, like the Commissioner said it perfectly, you know, we came in with nothing, everyone had it in their list of needs, and we had many rounds of budget meetings, and that's what the budget ends up being. It has nothing to do with last year's. It's based on projects that come to the table.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Repairs and maintenance, again, you budgeted 504, you spent 4,000.
Okay.
Next year, you're asking for almost $1 million. What are we repairing?
Mr. Chair, Representative Sandsted, I brought this up in the cities too when we met. Our HVAC system is completely shot here in this building. And there's an extra $450,000 now that will be going out for bid through REX very, very shortly, as soon as the budget's approved. And, you know, our units are continually down here, and it's a whole new upgrade. The air quality in this building, I mean, we had professionals come in, it's outdated, it's original, so that's the difference. That's an example of what we did last year versus what we're doing in the future. It's you know, it's based on need.
Representative Sampson.
I'm good.
Any other questions on the budget? Senator Thomasoni motions to accept the budget, seconded by Senator Eichhorn. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you. I forgot about that.
I can do that, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.